everyone, welcome back to Learning How to Tank. I'm your host, Auden the Preacher, and I'm going to talk to you today about Runic empowerment. And just as a reminder, this is a show by a Death Knight tank, so I'm going to talk about Death Knight tank stuff. I hope that if you're not a Death Knight tank, that you can take some of the concepts and apply them to other styles of tanking. But some of the specifics might not necessarily apply. So, without further ado, Runic empowerment to maximize your mitigation potential as a tank. So the two things that go hand in hand with this are keeping your blade barrier up all the time and getting as many death strikes as you can using Rune Strike. And Rune Strike will proc Runic empowerment, which takes a dormant rune that you have and refreshes it immediately. So the concept is that, like for instance, if I use my blood runes, I'll put the first one and that'll be actively cooling down, and then I'll use the second one and that will be my dormant rune. And once the first one finishes, now it's a ready to go rune and the other rune is now cooling down. So if I had other runes that were dormant and I used my Rune Strike, then I would go ahead and have a chance to refresh those immediately. And so ideally what I'll do is I will have one blood rune ready to go at all times, and the other one will be actively cooling down. And so then when I use my Rune Strike, I will get only procs on death runes or frost and unholy runes, so I can use those for more death strikes, or potentially if I need to reapply diseases, I can do that too. So there's a couple different ways that you can go about doing this, but the most effective way that I find, I really like to use Heart Strike. I think it's a nice ability. It gives you a little extra damage and a little bit extra threat over Blood Boil, unless obviously you have a whole bunch of mobs all around you. So I like to use Heart Strike, but that means I need a little bit more hit and expertise than some other people might like, and that's just really a playstyle choice, frankly. You know, and you kind of have to play with the stats the way you need them to play. That's going to work for your playstyle, definitely. So here we go. Let me just kind of show you how it works. So I get that first blood rune going, and when it's got like 3 to 4 seconds left, I go ahead and use the other blood rune, and then I can start going for my Rune Strikes to get procs. If I was fighting a boss, I would have way more runic power, obviously, than when I'm fighting a turning dummy, because I'm only getting runic power from my attacks and not from being hit. So we'll see in a few minutes here how that works against bosses. But in general, that is the way you want to approach maximizing this, so you can keep your blade barrier up all the time, but you're not sacrificing your other mitigation ability, which is Blood Shield, and your offsetting damage ability, which is the Death Strike, the heal from Death Strike. So those two things in and of themselves are really, really advantageous for you to focus on maximizing. It's really going to help your healers out a lot, because it's going to smooth out the damage curve. If you notice that like you take a lot of damage spikes, or you're told that like you're really spiky to heal, this is an area that if you're not doing it and you're told that you can really focus on trying to use these techniques to really smooth out that damage. Also, I didn't mention it, but if you don't have a lot of hit and you need to get a blood rune on cooldown quickly, you can definitely use a Blood Boil, or I also try to keep my Rune Tap on cooldown all the time, so go ahead and try that out as well. So to sort of illustrate the concepts a little bit that we were just talking about, I wanted to show you it in action in a few of the encounters. So here we have Nefarian, which doesn't require a lot of movement, and there's not a lot going on. So I pre-watched this, and I noticed that I did not maximize my Runic Strikes as often as I could. I did not go for that RP dump to get as many extra death runes as I really could have. But I do think that in general, this is a good example of keeping that blade barrier up as top priority, and using using the combination of Blade Barrier and Death Strike along with the other cooldowns that we do have to mitigate big damage and keep the healing curve pretty smooth. You know, if you watch my health, like, it's going down, but it's coming back up, and part of that is obviously due to the great healing, but part of it is also due to the fact that no one attack is really huge, and so it makes it easier for the healers to not overreact or underreact. There's kind of a consistent amount of damage coming in, so I think that's really valuable. Now this is the heroic Halphus fight, which is vastly different from Varian. I mean, honestly, it's a really different feel because there's so much going on. It's a front-loaded fight, so most of your damage is coming in the first couple minutes here. You know, you have 3 Drakes and Halphus at the same time, so that's a lot to deal with. Not only that, but you also have tank switching to deal with. I had picked this segment because I felt like I made a lot of mistakes when I was playing through it and watching through it quickly. When I watched through it again, I noticed that I did a fairly good job overall of keeping my Blade Barrier up. And generally, another goal that I had was trying to keep my diseases up. I don't think that I did as good of a job as I could with my Death Strikes. You know, in this particular fight, since there is so much going on, it's really easy to get caught up in it and get a little bit frantic, not use your cooldowns properly, and lose sight of the rhythm of keeping your runes rolling and using those runic empowerments to your advantage. I definitely could have done better with my blood rune timing. I noticed several times where I went for the second blood rune really early, and I had a long period of time where I would have liked to have been able to rune strike for runic empowerment, but because I had a dormant blood rune, it would have been to my disadvantage to do it. And it's definitely one of those things that is in the back of my mind while I'm playing, but in this particular case, I think I was feeling overly frantic, and so I was not using my abilities as well as I could have, and this turns into be a wipe, but it's a good example of what can happen if you don't follow some of the basic principles to maximize your mitigation, especially in a fight where there's so much physical damage coming in. You really need every advantage you can get, and I just definitely didn't do it all right there. So the next fight that we have on tap, and this is the final segment here, is Heroic Chimeran, and I picked this one because it is totally different from the other two. It is actually a really good illustration of another point that usually gets made about Death Knight tanking, and that's saving Death Strikes for after big damage. And if you notice, like Nefarian, there is the big predictable damage after Electrocute and the Shadow Flame Breaths, but those can be mitigated away with either Anti-Magic Shell, Mirror, or for the Shadow Flame Breaths, you can get your Bone Shield going, and you can definitely Death Strike after those, but because of your other abilities playing in, you don't get as much of an advantage from it, and so you definitely want to be using your Death Strike as often as possible. In this fight, there is only big damage. I mean, the Massacre is obviously huge damage because it does like 1,000,000 damage. The regular melee strikes on a tank are 130 to 140 normally, 1,000. The double attack is a huge damage because that's two normal swings. And during feud, you don't get any benefit from Finkel's mixture, but you still have to tank him. So here we go into the feud. My goal for this is to make sure that I maintain my diseases as well as maintain my blade barrier and do a good job with my blood shield. And obviously I'm using Icebound Fortitude there because you need a major cooldown. So in this one, I think I did a very good job actually of keeping my blade barrier up and following the double strike with Death Strike to get my health back up after that big swing, to help my healers out, because that's a really important part, is helping your healers out, especially on a phase like that, because it's such an intense phase and you have to be topped off like all the way through, because you take big damage, especially the very last swing of the feud. You're going to have 2 stacks of break, and that last hit can potentially hit you if you take it for like 195k, and if you don't have enough health to sustain it and you're at full, then you're not going to live. And you know, you don't want to ride avoidance as your only option for surviving that you have to roll the dice and get lucky. It's just not a sound strategy. So I know it's definitely something that can be done, but if you want consistency, then you want to maximize your mitigation as much as you can. And I hope that you can see that the tactic of maximizing your Death Strike usage through Runic Empowerment can really help your healers out and make the healing curve a lot smoother for them. So anyways, good luck, get some practice, and stay safe out there.